There's a lot of strange things that soldiers do on the battlefield to keep themselves alive. One of which is making sure that you don't have batteries in your lights. All right? Imagine you're on a patrol, nighttime. Your flashlight on your weapon goes off. And now the Mavics that are watching the battlefield see your entire platoon. So one thing that isn't taught to us, but we do instinctually, before you set out on a patrol or before you step outside onto the front line, you go over all the small things. You look at your flashlight and you think, this could give me away. Like if this randomly turns on, if it bumps against my body in a specific way and it turns on, I can get killed. So before stepping off, you take the flashlights out if you don't need them. And that's just a small taste of the things that you overthink. You overthink a lot before a mission. Dirtying our gear as soon as we get it. When you go to the military shops in Ukraine, you're gonna buy a new bag, you're gonna get a new plate carrier, and yeah, it's nice, it's new, it doesn't have holes in it. But if you're anything like me or anybody who knows anything about night vision or thermal capabilities, you're instantly going to go to a mud pile and just drag it in the mud. So that way it's just that more camouflage. You know, the camouflage is trying to fit into the environment. What better way to camouflage yourself than get a little bit of that environment on your camouflage? I know people who haven't washed their camis since they've gotten to Ukraine. It smells terrible, but they want to keep that natural dirt on them so that way they're just that much more camouflage. Also, when it comes to the cheap gear that you find online or in the shops, a lot of times that fabric is a little bit shiny. So again, you just want to rub it in the dirt. That was something I would teach when I was an instructor for the Ukrainian soldiers, as well as on the battlefield. That is what I did, not only in Ukraine, but also in my past wars. Picture this, you're in your trench line, you're an infantryman, and you have to watch your sector. You got to make sure that nobody's coming up. We're gonna be watching that sector for 18 hours plus a day, for a week, for a month. And your eyes can get tired. You're looking at the same scenery over and over. So one way that we deal with not becoming complacent, not letting our brain become complacent, even if our mind is in the right place, is that we scan right to left. Think about this. When you're reading a book, when you're growing up in school, all throughout life, you were reading left to right. And your brain actually becomes more accustomed to that, and they skip over words. You skip over words without even knowing that you are. That's how your brain works. You're watching the environment, you scan right to left. That way you can break that habit and look more thoroughly through the bushes, through the trees. So that's a small one, but something I don't think a lot of people know. I saw in a warfare movie that I just watched, they were doing that, and they did a great job showing the sniper watching over his sector right to left. So if you ask any infantryman, that's what they do. When I was a Mavic pilot, I would stay in position for a week, and we ran night rotations. We had to go outside, pick up the drone, set it off, and then we'd have to go inside into the lights inside our bunker. So one thing soldiers are taught is that when you're about to exit a light-filled room into the darkness, as a human, you have natural night vision, believe it or not. It's not great, but it exists. And your eyes are better suited to the darkness if you stay in it for at least 10 minutes. So you can imagine me as a Mavic operator, I'm in a bunker that has a lot of light, we're looking at our screens, and then I have to run outside to pick up my drone or set off a drone. Well, my brain is still accustomed to the light, so when I go outside, it's pitch black. So one thing that was taught to me in the Marine Corps, and I carry with me even to this day, just saved me in a lot of cases probably, not spending too much time just watching my step and taking it slowly, is to close one eye a couple minutes before you're about to go outside. That way, when you're ready to go outside, you can open it up when you get into the darkness and you'll have a little bit of night vision, at least from one eye. It's a big difference. You guys can try this anywhere. You can be upstairs in the light, close off one eye, go downstairs, and you'll see that your vision in your eye that you had closed is a lot better. You can pick up things. The next one, which was taught to me, I didn't have to use much, but I've heard it works a lot, which is that when you're an infantryman, you're scanning your environment, like I said previously, one of the things you want to do is have a notebook that has a green paper on it. Because your eyes become a lot less strained when it looks like green. Green is a very normal, calming color. So when you're done scanning your environment for an hour or two, you might be having an eye strain. You might be not picking up on things. Just take that green notebook, look at it for a minute or two, and then as soon as you look up, it'll be a lot less straining. It'll be a lot more attentive. You just got to give yourself a little bit of a break. Putting tape on a rifle. So I've talked about this a lot. You can see it in pretty much all my combat videos. I have a light attached. I have tape around the different parts that are metallic on my sleeve, so that way it doesn't jingle or make noise. You know, like when we're doing recon, especially at the start of the war, or in Iraq or Syria, any time that I've ever had a rifle, the first thing I do is that I tape up all the metallic parts. I shake my rifle, I shake my ruck, and I try and make sure that there's no noise, because that's so easy to pick up. At nighttime and daytime, it's a big warning. So you want to make sure to tape it up, make it a duller noise if it does clean. So that's why in a lot of cases, combat videos, you'll see guys taping their magazines, you'll see them taping the lights to their rifles, anything. Part of it's so that you can grip it better with gloves on, part of it is noise discipline, but nonetheless, tape is super valuable. I think it's pretty confusing for some people seeing the Mavic and FPV footage where the Russians or the Ukrainians stand still. Well, there's a reason behind that. The reason is that Your vision, your brain is meant to see movement. That is the best way you can find somebody. When I'm watching as a IFAK operator, I don't often find guys standing in front of a doorway just slowly peeking their head through. I see movement. That's how I caught probably 95% of the people that I found in Bakhmut. So that is why you freeze at first contact with an FPV. You don't know if they're watching you. You don't know if they found you yet. You freeze. If it seems like it's coming at you, okay, you run. But the first instinct is to freeze. That is why you see it. I think they take it a little too far. We've all seen the videos where they're still frozen and it just runs into them, but there's a reason behind everything. Don't look up at jets or drones with your bare face, all right? This is a big reason that I carry a scarf on me ever since Iraq. We were dealing with the Paracord, the Turkish military, the Air Force. And the human brain is meant to see faces. We see faces in everything. We can see it in toast. We can see it in friggin' everything. You look at the wall, you look at the clouds, you see a human face. So you can imagine you look up with your oily face up at a drone with a very nice digital camera, they're gonna spot you very easily. So you gotta put a scarf over you before you look up and try and view that drone. If you're the drone guard, the person in the patrol whose job is to scan for drones. Turning Face ID off before you go on a mission. Even before you go to a war zone, just turn it off. As we all know by now, or you should know, Face ID is extremely visible from night vision devices. They put out infrared beams everywhere, lighting up your position, and obviously infrared is invisible to the naked eye. So you gotta make sure, before you go to the front line, turn off Face ID. Every soldier carries paracord on them, whether it's a couple meters or 50 meters. You carry paracord because your sling just broke. Stuff breaks. You gotta be able to tie down gear like your night vision to your helmet because that thing gets lost in the dark. If it falls off in the dark, you're not going to find it. And it's very expensive. You got to keep your gear accountable, as well as you can use paracord for a stretcher as a way to get a casualty out. If he has a carabiner, you just tie it around. You can use it as a tow rope if you need. If you're on top of an apartment and you got to get gear from below, you can create a pulley system. There's so many ways that you can use paracord, and that's why every soldier carries it. Using a pen for a tracheotomy. It's a pretty weird one. It's a medical procedure. It's something that medics usually do, but I think every infantryman should know how to do. Tracheotomy is where if you have massive facial trauma and you're not able to breathe, like the casualty isn't able to breathe, you have to cut right below the Adam's apple, and then you have to put an air tube inside. Well, if you don't have an air tube on you, if he doesn't have it in his IFAK, which most people don't, you can take a pen. You can just take anything that you can find and put it down there. That way he can breathe. He can get oxygen into his system. The next one is counting your footsteps. Before a patrol, before even getting deployed, you're going to get a pace count, which is where you go 100 meters on even terrain and you count how many paces it takes you to go 100 meters. And then you do it in uneven terrain. So you have two different pace counts. And how this works is when you're going to an objective, you don't know exactly how far away it is. You were told about 500 meters. You don't have a GPS on you. It's being jammed maybe. You have to be able to know how much of a distance you went. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can have ranger beads, which is a bracelet. And every time you go 100 meters, your 68 steps or whatever it is to get 100 meters, you put it to the side and you just keep doing that until you know you went 500 meters. You have 5 of them there. Or you can have rocks in your pocket. That's a way that we did it as well, where you have rocks in your left pocket. Every time you go 100 meters, put one to your right pocket. And then at the end of it, when somebody asks for a pace count, all right, I've got 4 rocks. We went 400 meters. It's very valuable. It's very easy to get lost on the front line. Go ahead of friendly lines, go behind. And this will just give you a better idea of how far you went and where you are on the map. The maps aren't a great way to know where you are on the front line because it looks so different. Obviously, it's a little bit more cratered in. So having a pace count it's a big deal. The next one is combat walking. I can't really show you guys here, but combat walking is a lot different than normal walking. As you're approaching an enemy position, you're gonna have your rifle up and you'll be walking towards that target. You don't wanna be staring at the ground for tripwire or maybe tripping. So combat walking is where you put your toes up as you walk and you go ankle down, and then you also bring it up to almost a high knee. That way you don't have to look at the ground, you're not gonna trip. So yeah, that's how infantrymen walk during the last 50 meters of an assault. The last one I learned in Iraq especially, which was having your boots untied next to you, ready to put on. Everybody who goes to Shengal and becomes a guerrilla fighter there has to go through a sort of ritual where in the middle of the night, they set off grenades next to your place and you have to run down the tunnels into the mountains. And this happens while you're sleeping. They want to wake you up to it and you got to go. And because you're sleeping, a lot of people take off their socks. They put their shoes wherever. They forget their eyeglasses. They don't know where it is. But you got to be able to run at any point. So this is a big wake up call for people to know it's going to be dusty. You're not going to be able to see everything. You got to be able to know exactly where your boots are. It has to be ready to be put on. You have to be able to get out of there as soon as possible or else you'll be killed. So yeah, having all of your gear, everything essential that you need ready to be put on is a must. Shadow walking. I don't know what to call it, but you have to think about where the sun is. There's about a 15 to 30 minute interval in the evening and in the morning when your shadow is like 15 meters long. And this could give you away very easily to a drone. super easy, especially vehicles, because they are not well camouflaged. They are straight lines and round, and the shadow gives them away from miles away. So that's something you don't really get during training, but you become much more aware of when you're in a combat setting. Where's your shadow? Is it giving you away? It's definitely a possibility. The next one is the balance of eating and drinking on the front line. The last thing you want to do, the last thing that's going to be on your mind when you're in the middle of a mission is eating a snack. But it's really important. Obviously, your brain is gonna be overwhelmed and you might be jittery. You just ran, a kilometer to get away from an artillery bombardment. You burned a lot of calories. So every time that you're on the front line and you have 2 minutes to spare, you want to remind your team, eat a snack. It's definitely not instinctual. It's not something you would think you would want to do on the front line, but it's needed. And you never know when you're going to get your next meal. So it's really important to keep that in mind. That's what soldiers do. They eat whenever they have 2 minutes, especially in infantryman role, when things can go south really easily. Taking the path of most resistance. I've spoken about this in the past, but you have to take the path that the enemy doesn't expect you to. I know as a Maverick pilot, I would check the main roads because I know that that's the easiest path. They're just going to walk down the road to their house and then go in their bunker. So if you're doing infills, if you're doing exfills, it's important to go and take the path they might not expect. That way you have just a couple more minutes of not being seen or not being observed or watched. And the last one, having a go bag. It's a it's the fan situation. You got to run away without all the gear that you brought. So you better have a go bag with a little bit of water, a little bit of food, maybe the essential gear like your night vision that you're not using at that point. So the expensive stuff. You shouldn't be carrying all the gear, especially as a drone operator where you have like 5 bags. You only bring the essential stuff. So you need to have a go bag always available. And that goes for everybody, no matter what job they have. Everybody has at least 2 bags. You have your main pack and you have your assault pack. So you got to make sure to have that assault pack with all the stuff that you really desperately need. Some ammunition, some water, some food, and the really essential stuff. So that's pretty much that, guys. I mean, there's tons of stuff that we do in the military that is not conventional. It's not something you would think, but it has a lot to do with the brain. It has a lot to do with instincts. And overall, it all has to do with adapting to the battlefield. So anyway, I hope you guys learned something, and I appreciate you listening. See you guys in the next one. Peace.